מסכת עורלה, פרק, chapter 1, ח'. So we were discussing what is Orla, what isn't Orla, and things like this. Right? Okay. Mishnatenu baa lelamed. Our Mishnah is going to come to teach us. So we discussed that the tree itself is not called Orla. You remember? The tree itself, anything that comes from the tree, if it's not fruit, is not called Orla. What about a fruit which is not edible? That's the next question. Is a fruit that's not edible called Orla, or is not called Orla? So we're going to learn she'af pri lakui, that even a fruit which is lacking, we're going to see what lacking means, V'chen atafel lapri, and anything secondary to the fruit, we're going to see what is also secondary to the fruit. What does it even mean? Asuri mishum orla. All these things are also prohibited because of orla. Let's start. Ankuklot. Ankuklot. So, Yerushalmi Mevuar, in the Yerushalmi it explains, what is this ankuklot? Anavim shelaku. This is grapes that did not develop properly. ונתקלקלו קודם שהגיעו לשליש בשולם, and became, they're not going to develop the right way, but that's before they even got to a third of being ripe. יש סוברים שתיבה זו היא צירוף. There are those who think, where does this funny word ankuklot comes from? So they say it comes from anav klukal. It comes from the word a grape that is spoiled, or a grape that did not grow the right way. And they put these two words together, they got ankuklot. והחרצנים, and the pits, והזגים, and the shells, the skin, קליפות הענבים, those are the shells, והתמד שלהם, and their temed. Now, what is this temed? Temed is a drink they used to make. The poor people couldn't afford to make wine. Wine is expensive. So what do we do? It's מים שנותנים על החרצנים והזגים. They would put water on the pits and on the skins של ענבים of the grapes שנסחטו, that were already made into grape juice. וכשמחמיץ ותוסס, and you let it sit over there until it ferments. נעשה משקה שיש בו טעם של יין. It becomes a drink that has a taste of wine. I would say something more alcoholic, yeah, in these days. Okay. קליפי רימון והנץ שלו, the shells of a pomegranate, and הנץ שלו, נץ means הפרח שבראשו, the flower that's on his head, קליפי הגוזים, the shells of the nuts, והגרעינים, and the inside of the nuts, גרעיני כל הפירות, and the pits of any kind of fruits, all of these אסורים בעורלה. They are forbidden in orla. Now you're going to say, what do you mean all these things are forbidden? Who eats pits? Nobody eats pits, nobody eats shells.
But maybe you make uga, you make something.
No, so if you make an uga itself, but people don't make uga from them. Especially rimonim, nothing is made from it. Oh. But it's still prohibited. So it says why? We discussed that the tree and the leaves, right, we had this discussion, are permitted. So why is this prohibited? Because it is part of the fruit. It is secondary to the fruit. Yeah? So all these things are surim be'orla. But it says, where did you learn it from? Shene'emar, because it says in Vayikra Yutet Chaf Gimel, Ve'arlatem arlato et piryo, and you're going to circumcise his fruit. And we have a rule, you remember the famous rule with the word et?
Yeah, that it's lerabot.
Very good. The famous rule with the word et, every time there's an et in the Torah, and there's thousands of ets in the Torah, but it comes to include something new. So what does the et piryo comes to include here? Lerabot hatafel lepiryo. It comes to include the secondary to the fruit. So the secondary to the fruit is the pits and the shell and so on. Up to here, finished. So we learned that this fruit and its secondary are considered to be orla. Even though the fruit, like we said, is going to be spoiled. Nobody's ever going to eat this type of fruit. It grew in the wrong way. But because it's a fruit, it's orla. Next. Uva Asherah. Next we're going to go into a different topic. We're going to discuss an Asherah. What's an Asherah? מהטעם שהזכרנו כבר במשנה הקודמת, from the reasoning we already mentioned in the previous Mishnah, שנאמר, because it says, Asherah is a tree that was worshipped as an idol worship. So it says, ולא ידבק בידך מאומה מן החרם. Over there it says you shouldn't have anything in your hand from the prohibition. So that it will include even maybe the tree itself, not just the fruit and the secondary. Ubenazir, also a Nazirite, is prohibited in those things. It's not a fruit. We said the Nazirite is allowed to eat leaves of vineyard. So why is he not allowed to eat these things? It's not food. Nobody eats them. Ubenazir, she'asurim lanazir hachartzanim, because a Nazirite is not allowed to eat the pits, והזגים והתמת שלהם. Not only the pits, also the shells, and also the water that is made from them, that we mentioned before. שנאמר בו, because it says about the Nazirite, in במדבר ו' ג' to ד', חומץ יין, all, how do you say over there חומץ in English? Vinegar made out of wine, וחומץ שכר, and harder alcoholic beverage, לא ישתה, he should not drink, וכל משרת ענבים לא ישתה, and all that was sitting in grapes, or kavush it's called in Hebrew, kavush in grapes, he should not drink. And then it continues, מחרצנים ועד זג, from the pits and until the shells לא יאכל, he should not eat them. So over here by a Nazirite it says specifically over him, so that's why he's not allowed to. So that's what we discussed orla in the third year. What about the fourth year? Are you allowed to have it on the fourth year?
You have to take it to the Holy Temple, no?
Yeah.
And give it to, and eat it there.
So are you allowed to have it there?
In Yerushalayim, okay? That's what I was thinking.
ומותרים ברביעי. And it is permissible on the fourth year. שנט הרביעי אינו אסור בהנאה. That the fourth year, it is not prohibited from enjoyment. אלא דינו כמעשר שני. This is just like the second tithing. שנאכל לבעליו בירושלים. His owner can eat it in ירושלים. וכשם שאין מתקדש בקדושת מעשר שני. And it's very important to remember, it doesn't become holy like the second tithing. אלא, second tithing, things that become holy are things that you can eat. All these things are things that you don't eat. All the things that we discuss is you don't eat it.
But I didn't think that he'd say mutarim b'revi'i, he's talking about those things, he's talking about the fruit.
Oh, no,
he's not talking about the pits and the...
It's exactly. So you make wine from it, from the pits, the temed, the zagim, the zeu. You can do with it whatever you want, and it looks like you can do it with whatever you want, not only in Yerushalayim, but also outside of Yerushalayim.
In the Revi'i?
In the Revi'i. Why?
Because you can eat the fruit.
Why?
Because you can eat the fruit.
Only in Yerushalayim.
Okay.
So how can you do it in Beersheba? Because when you say you can eat, you got the point. You can eat the fruit in Yerushalayim, and all of these things.
That's not fruit.
It's secondary to fruit. It's not the fruit itself. So when it comes to orla in the first 3 years, we're going to consider it fruit, even though it's only secondary to fruit. But when it comes to revi'i, we're not going to be as stringent and tell you you're not allowed to. So let's continue. Ela davar haraui la'achila. So those things that people eat, you can make it prohibited. But these things are not, people cannot eat it. אף רביעי אינו נוהג אלא בדבר ראוי לאכילה. So the fourth year, if it's a fruit, you have to go take Yerushalayim. If it's one of those things that we discussed before, you don't have to take it for Yerushalayim.
I'll give you an example. For example, there is almonds. Before the almonds become to be hard, it have a very soft shell. You know, you can eat it. You eat it. I love it. So this is example of the shell that you can actually use it. You can eat it.
Yeah, I'm not sure this is our case though.
Why?
It's a good question. I don't know what they will do with almonds.
Shell.
Yeah, but over here, the discussion that he gives over here, it's people don't eat it.
As a general, they don't eat, but it's the time of the fruit getting ripe. Before it gets ripe, you can eat it.
It's a good question. I don't know about. I understand exactly what you said. Yeah.
You eat the shell, but it's prohibited.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
I'm not sure though. In your case, because do people eat it?
Can eat the inside.
Do almond farmers go out and eat those things?
In Israel, they do. In Israel, I used to be a little bit. You don't remember the green almonds? In Melach, they used to send.
I remember those.
No.
That's what it was.
We used to eat it. We used to eat it. The way they are not ready, they are not this, but before.
So the question is, maybe this is called ready.
Right.
Maybe this is called because it's when you eat it, it's called ready.
Falling after this category. But
it's a good question. I don't know what they would do with almonds. You're right. והנובלות, what are נובלות? נובלות are פירות שנשרו מן האילן. These are fruits that dropped from the tree. לפני גמר בישולם, before they were a third.
Here you go.
Before they were a third. כולם אסורות. All of these are prohibited. של כולם. They're prohibited completely. בין של עורלה, בין של רביעי. And this is going to be prohibited also on the fourth year. בין של אשרה, בין לנזיר, whether it is from an Asherah, a tree that was used for idol worship, whether it was an Nazirite, this is all prohibited, even though we said it needs to be a third growth. Over here, it didn't get to a third growth yet, but it's still considered to be the fruit itself. Before, we weren't discussing the fruit. We were discussing the shells or the fruit that is not going to grow the right way. Over here, we're discussing the fruit itself. So the fruit itself, even though before third, it's still prohibited.
So you wonder if the falling part is important, because what Arya said, that's unripe fruit, the green almond skin. But what if you pick it versus it's falling?
In the end of Mishnah Zayin, we learned that the pagim chashuvim pri לעניין orla. That the unripe fruit are considered to be fruit when it comes to orla.
Oh.
So we already learned that in the previous Mishnah.